Good morning and good afternoon from wherever you're all joining in. On behalf of EduTech, I'm delighted to welcome you to this webinar on digital capability building. A quick word on EduTech before we start. In 1991, EduTech was established with the purpose of using technology to transform learning. And that's what we continue to do today and serve institutions with both hands-on and technology-based learning opportunities across educational institutions and organizations globally. And we're very glad to be hosting this webinar for all of you. Now, we want to just run a quick poll just to be able to get to know you, our audience. So we would appreciate if you can take a minute to respond to those questions so we'll be able to customize this for you. Okay, thank you very much for your responses. That gives us a good idea about the kind of expectations that you would have for this event. Thank you. So there's been a huge migration happening in the past few months towards a life in the digital world. Well before the personal adjustments we have had to make, forward-looking organizations and governments had started on a digital transformation journey towards improving productivity, innovation, enhancing customer experiences, and increasing financial performance. The digital shift is changing and even creating new roles across industries, resulting in a growing skills gap, digital skills gap. It is expected that half of all employees will require significant learning opportunities in order to do their jobs, in understanding new technologies, its impact, and also the opportunities that it brings to their own industries and businesses. So towards this, we'd like to talk about how we can help organizations build such digital transformation capability. I'm pleased to welcome Jan Vieira. Jan is the co-founder and managing director of University for Industry in Munich. He is also a former junior partner at McKinsey, and he's an MBA from University of California, Berkeley, and also has a diploma in physics from the TU University in Berlin.
Hi, thanks for having me today.
Thanks for joining us, Jan. So Jan, can I start by asking you, digital transformation has become a buzzword today. Can you start with an example of a company reaping real business benefits from their investments in digital transformation?
Yeah, sure. And I think this is a very interesting question. Yeah, which companies manage to actually get really something out of digitization? And there is the very well-known examples of the internet companies. Yeah, there's also companies, big ones like Siemens or so, that really push that a lot into the media. Yeah, what I think is much more interesting is more like the unlikely companies that you might not have in mind. And one company that I like a lot as an example is a small, or not small, but a medium-sized company, one of these hidden champions in Germany. It's a company called Pepperl & Fuchs that you probably never heard of before. They are specialized in automation equipment. They have around 6,000 or 8,000 employees worldwide, and I really like what these guys have been doing in the past 4 or 5 years, because they went down digital transformation along 3 pillars. Yeah. So the one thing they did is they started to digitize their products. So they took their core products, which is sensors for the automation industry, and they put them on new connectivity standards. They added new functionality to it. They are using even artificial intelligence to have more powerful products in the market, and the revenue from these products is actually what is really driving growth of the company. So this is kind of like the one thing that might be obvious of digitizing your product and your service offering around it. The second thing they also did is they really looked at the whole production and supply chain, and they introduced digital tools, digital supply chain management, and they, for example, brought down fulfillment cycles from 4 weeks to 2 days now, yeah, when orders come in, really leveraging digitization to not only save cost, but also to massively increase performance in the supply chain. And then the third area where they are also driving digitization, and this is actually the last thing they tackled, but they are also doing this quite successfully, is all these other processes, yeah, you also have in the company. So the sales process, the customer handling process, the support processes, and also finance, yeah, where it's some bigger initiatives with introducing massive IT tools, but also just some smaller things, for example, enabling the finance teams to do better analysis and using more data. And I like this example so much because it's not one of these huge companies that also do the same thing, but it shows that every company, if you do it strategically and you do it well in a real transformation, you can really drive forward impact that can come out of a digital transformation.
Well, that is really amazing. And I think that offers such potential for companies to be more productive and enhance their performance as well. So as we can imagine, post-COVID, investments in digital transformation is only expected to grow. And governments in the region had already projects in place like smart cities and national artificial intelligence strategy, among others. So what is the essential component in getting returns on such investments in digital transformation?
Yeah, so I think interesting question, and this is something where, in my observation, that there is something that sometimes companies and projects and also governments get wrong, and that is too much a focus on technology. Yeah, so a focus on having the latest and greatest technology, having yet another technology innovation project. And yes, you also need this, but you shouldn't forget about the people, because there will be the people that need to work with these new technologies. Yeah, and therefore I believe that really the capability building needs to go hand in hand with investments in technology and innovations, because otherwise there might be a few experts on the technology and that is not going to be sufficient. Yeah, and this is actually the reason why University for Industry exists, because we have a strong belief that there is a massive capability gap, and you mentioned that in your opening statement, that needs to be solved. And I strongly personally believe, and I've seen it again and again, if you don't get the capability building right and you don't get the little nuts and bolts of the capability building right, then it probably is to a large extent wasted money with all the other investments you do on the digital transformation.
And so now, can you give us more information on how University for Industries help in such digital capability building?
Yeah, sure. Most happy to do. Let me share my screen. Yeah. So because I think there might be some helpful slides to explain this. Yeah. As you said in your opening statement, yeah, the kind of like, there is this massive problem, and I think it was also quite interesting to see kind of like in this initial survey that most of the participants here are somewhere on this journey already on the digital transformation. So I think I don't need to convince you that there's a lot of people that need to be reskilled. Yeah. And as I said, the capability building for these digital transformations, you must get that right. And this is actually what Wolfgang Huhn and myself had in mind when we, in 2015, coming out of industry, coming out with a background where we understood what big companies need, what industry needs. Yeah, we started University for Industry, and what we at the time kind of like said, what we want to do is we want to use digital methods to close the digital skill gap. We want to do this at scale, so in a way that it works for big organizations, for a large number of people. Yeah, and we want to do it in a format that works for large corporations, because what we observed is we're not the only ones in the world who use digital methods to close digital skill gaps, but you need to get this right in order to do it at scale and to do it in a way so that it works for the large corporations. So this is why we started University for Industry, and if you look at it today, we've built a company with a bit more than 40 people now, mainly based out of Germany. We have a couple of strong partnerships, and we're very glad to also partner with EduTech. And what we're actually doing is we we deliver online trainings around topics like machine learning, software engineering, blockchain, digital strategy. And we have produced about 900, a bit more than 900 hours of content here that is available in a format and in a way that works for industry. And I will talk about that a bit more about that in a second, yeah, with an expert network. So it's not us, it's not the two founders who have knowledge here, because that would never be sufficient, but we've worked with more than 300 experts out of more than 85 institutions to kind of like get this content and to get really leading content for industry. And if you look at our customers, here's a few examples, yeah, we really have something that works and that works in big industry and that really solves these problems. And you see here that we are, for example, serving some of the big car manufacturers. We are also serving leading tech companies like Zeiss. We are also, for example, serving companies like TÜV Nord and also the German federal government. Yeah, so you see there is quite a breadth of kind of like of our approach and how this is being used. Yeah, so let me explain a bit more what we are doing and why this is working. And in order to understand this, I want to take a bit of a step back. Yeah, because I made this bold statement of if you want to be successful in capability building in order to support a digital transformation, you need to get it right. And in order to understand what you must get right, yeah, I think we need to understand the problem a bit more. And the problem that I see here is actually, it's 5 things that we need to consider. The first one is there is a huge number of employees. So whatever you do, you need to do at scale. There's a second problem, and that is there is a vicious circle. And we see this again and again when we talk with industry leaders, when we talk with customers, yeah. And that is, at the moment, many companies are in a situation where they don't have capabilities. Because they don't have capabilities, they don't make progress on their digitization projects. And because they don't make projects on the digitization projects, there is no need for more capabilities, and then they don't build capabilities and so on. Yeah, so this is, many companies are really stuck in this area where yes, a lot of people should be reskilled, but only a few are actually being reskilled. Yeah. Then, and I think this one is very obvious, there's really a need for speed, because, and that was true before Corona, and that's ever more true today. Yeah. With digitization happening extremely fast, new innovations coming with such a rapid pace, new technologies coming. So whatever you do, you need to design it in a way where it's very adaptable and where you can add the next innovation in whatever you're doing. And then there is something, the last 2 are something that I've seen, this has been overlooked, I think, often in past attempts to do digital capability building. And if you just think about the employees in your companies or your organizations, yeah, they don't have a lot of time, because there is a job that they need to do today in order to do whatever is their task today, and they can't afford to step out, or most people out there can't afford to step out of the workforce for half a year or a year, do a 900-hour reskilling course, and then come back into the workforce. Yeah. So whatever you have to do is you have to do it in a way that it is very suited to kind of like a full calendar. What we typically see is people can afford to learn 1 or 2 hours a week. Yeah. And this also means that everything you do has to be very targeted, so that the programs and the content is really tailored to the individual needs, which will be very different from industry to industry, from company to company, department to department, and person to person. Yeah. So it's all about tailoring. And this is kind of like what we believe, what you need to fix, and you need to get these 5 right. And how do you get it right? And this is something which we've been experimenting on in the early years of our company, and which we believe we have now solved. Yeah, how to get this right has kind of like 5 pillars. The first thing is you need to have an online offering, so you need to have something that is fully digitized and that is self-paced as much as possible. Yeah. And we believe that in-person trainings and WebEx sessions, like we're doing it at the moment, will not be a format which scales enough in order to deliver the magnitude of reskilling and capability building that is. The second thing, having in mind what I just so detailed talked about the availability of time, there is something about content personalization that you must get right. Yeah. And this means the content must match the business objectives. And this is very important, because a university style curriculum that comes, for example, very academically from the technology basics, yeah, that is not efficient enough for what is needed in the business context. So you need to really match it to the needs of the group, and you need to have content that matches business objectives. And then there is something about the variety of formats. And when I initially talked about what kind of like our mission is to use digital technology for doing digital capability building. We believe there is something about really using technology in a way that humans explain, yeah. And there is something about exploration and experimentation that you can enable, which enables a form of learning which is way more advanced than the more classic e-learnings which have been around since the late 90s, yeah. And then these three are very important, but in addition to this, you need to get it right in the way you orchestrate and how you run it, because otherwise you will not have success. So there's something about having clear objectives and a clear motivation, because just providing a library doesn't work. And we see this again and again. If you just, if customers, we've done this in the early years, yeah, just providing a library of content, even if it's good content, it doesn't work. You need to have an objective that is a link to a business goal, and you have if you have this clear objective, you get the motivation and people learn, and then you still need to orchestrate it as a program. And this is what we do with a very weekly rhythm with live sessions, yeah, where it's not me as the user learning against the machine, yeah, but it is me where I get this rhythm and I get this help in the program. And this is what I want to go a bit deeper now. Let's first look at this first question of the different formats. What content is it and how can this work? Yeah. In my quick overview about what we're doing, I already mentioned that we have available content now close to 1,000 hours, which covers a variety of different topics. So it starts off with what is actually industrial IoT, what is Industry 4.0, yeah, covers topics like artificial intelligence, machine learning, software engineering, and goes all the way to topics like blockchain and industrial security. And we've built here a library of content, and we've built that with partners. So all these companies you see here, and you might recognize some of the logos, the big global companies. You might not recognize some of the logos because this is either startups that are leading in an area, or it's some of these more hidden champions, yeah, like I mentioned earlier before, Pepperl and Fuchs, yeah, they are one of these hidden champions that are really good in a couple of connectivity areas. And we've produced content with these guys because we believe this is institutions, universities, but also companies that are really leading in their area, and that have a way of these experts have a way of talking about what this is all about. And an example I particularly like is if you look down at industrial security, there we have Siemens. And with Siemens, we produced here content around a norm called IEC 62443, which is the leading norm for industrial security. The expert we have here in front of the camera was the Siemens guy who actually wrote the norm. So he literally wrote the norm. And I think learning from that person is such a unique opportunity, because he knows the industry context, but he also knows the norm by heart, which gives you the opportunity to really learn in a unique way. So this is the one thing we bring to the table. This is our library that we bring to the table. And I think the best way for you to understand in what I mean with the expert is explaining here is if we look at a little bit of content. So let's start maybe with an example from blockchain. Yeah. So let me open this. What this loads now is really the player on our website. Yeah. So this is kind of like our online website. Let's go a few pages up. So this is a chapter here, which is called Potentials and Risk of Blockchain. Yeah. And you see, we have done this with Fraunhofer. This is a research organization here in Germany with, I think, 50 or 60,000 employees, which is really leading, as well as with the university. Yeah. And this is what you will learn in this chapter. And let's now look at this video, yeah, which is part of our online learning content here. What is blockchain all about?
Blockchain. What is it about?
If you think about blockchain, normally people think about cryptocurrencies, they think about getting rich within a very short time. We consider blockchain more as a new way to support cooperation among companies. And maybe I can use a metaphor or an image to explain that. Think about an office environment in the 1900s. You would see people working on paper documents. You would see a lot of shelves containing a lot of paper that contains bookkeeping records, which exactly also contain transactions. If you want to digitize that, there is an immediate reflex. nowadays. You take a database, there you store all the transactions that have been exchanged between the different companies. And if you look at the people, then you will use an application system that is making use of that database.
But how can we adapt these 20th century methods for the 21st century?
Nowadays, we're all working together in a lot of different networks, and we have a lot of business processes that incorporate a lot of different companies. If you want to digitize that, you need to have a protocol for it.
So let me pause here and go back to kind of like the presentation. I think what you've seen here is actually two things. On the one hand, you've seen Professor Prinz here, who is one of the most renowned and leading experts on blockchain in Europe. Yeah. What you've also seen, and this is why I like this example, you see in a very kind of like clear way how he takes the focus of companies. He's not talking about blockchain as a technology for Bitcoin or things like that. He mentions it, I think, in his opening statement for like 3 seconds. And then he goes in and says like, okay, what does that mean for a company? What does that mean for an organization that has to do bookkeeping? And then he explains blockchain. And this is what we have in mind when I'm talking about, we have to produce the content in a way that you learn firsthand from the expert, but we also have to produce the content in a way that it is really relevant for the context of our customers, and our customers being companies and large organizations. And let's have a quick look at a second example. What is design thinking, which is a non-technical topic? Yeah, so design thinking is just a working method. And that's
what is design thinking?
So design thinking is a problem-solving methodology that puts the user in the center, that looks at technical feasibility as well as business viability of a solution.
This is done in 3 steps.
We have a steps where we try to define what the problem is. We have another steps where we design some solutions. And we have a step where we actually deliver a solution that we measure later.
So let me again pause here. So I just wanted to show you this for 2 reasons. One, that we're not only covering technical topics like blockchain, but also because I think this video, it's super simple, yeah. But what it does is you have this expert talking, and what he's talking about makes all the sense in the world. But with the additional effort we put in here, with the visualization we're doing, we really support the learner that it is very easy to digest. And I think you all will go home now and you will remember, okay, there's these 3 parts now about design thinking that makes up design thinking. Yeah. So I think this is some examples about the content. This is this big library of content we're using. But having videos and having learning content is only one little part of what we are offering, because we believe whatever is done in online learning really needs to be human. So it can't be that there's only videos or so. So there is 4 parts to it. One is our online modules, which are there for self-paced learning. So this is the video-based learning that we just saw where the expert explains. It's slides that come with this is text, and then it's all sorts also of online exercises. So the multiple choice that you all know, but it's also cases where you have to give a text answer. It is little experimentation and so on. All this very flexible, self-paced, you can learn whenever it fits your calendar. There's a second pillar to it, that's our so-called digital labs, which goes one step further of using digital technology for experimentation and hands-on experience with real data and real tools. And examples here are, for example, programming exercises. It is in the area of machine learning, exercises where you get a data set, you have to clean it, and then you can yourself apply some machine learning algorithms. And it goes as far as really giving people via the web browser, via webcam, access to real hardware and experimenting with real hardware. And then in addition to this, we believe in our program approach, about which I will talk in a second, there is more to it. So we also need to leverage humans. So we also have parts where we do actually group projects where people co-create virtually, for example, via teams together within their teams, yeah. And for example, apply what they learned before in the online modules and in the digital labs to their work experience. And then we have also certain interactions with experts, which, for example, might be a great opportunity also in a big organization to give access to the leading experts in this field in the company and really spread the knowledge. Yeah. So it is really all about not only using one of these four pillars, but bringing all this together. Yeah. So this is how learning works. And then there is one more thing I would like to talk about. And this is, I made a huge fuss in the beginning about this. People don't have time. So it's all about giving the right content to the right person. And this is an example that we're doing for one of the big German car manufacturers, where we are training their employees around the world on the topic of industrial security. Yeah. So this is around security in their factories. And what we've done with them, we've built up a training program where I think the group, the target group with the smallest schedule is the guys that have least time that's factory management. They have an overall program of 2.5 or 3 hours. Yeah. And there's other groups like, for example, the IT teams or the security team leads in the factories. Yeah. These guys have a program of a net learning time of 16, 18, some 20 hours. Yeah. The way this works is they share a common set of content, and you see this here. Yeah. So for example, everybody needs to learn about the introduction of security. Yeah. Most groups need to learn about security goals. Yeah. And then the green ones here are always tests. Yeah. So there's a test about this introduction. Everybody didn't, no matter what the target group is. And in reality, it's not only 4, but it's 8 different target groups. Yeah. But I think everybody in every target group needs to do this test. Yeah. And then there's, for example, something on the risk analysis. Yeah, so there's an introduction to risk analysis. Management doesn't have to do this. Yeah, the red ones here is something that we specifically produced for this car manufacturer. Yeah, where there's a small module that we blend in, which is specific to the car manufacturer. Talks about how do we in our company do a risk analysis. Yeah, this is something that only the security team lead and the IT need. And this is something that is unique about our content. So you can imagine these 900, close to 1,000 hours of content that we have. You can imagine it like a big box with little Lego bricks, and you can really puzzle it together for each of the company and then for each of the target groups in a way that it exactly works for the target group and that it makes it an efficient learning experience. Yeah. So this is kind of like this dimension of getting the right online offering out there, getting something out there that is scaling, that can be personalized, and that uses a lot of formats. And then there's a second part to it, and I touched on that here and there already. And that is about how do you run it? Yeah, how do you make this that it starts with a clear motivation, with a clear objective, and that you orchestrate it as a program. And I think the best to explain this is again to take an example. So what you see here, this is an example that we are running at the moment with a medium-sized company. So medium-sized is quite funny because this is how we call it in Germany. So they have 30,000 employees. They're in whatever they are doing, really world market leader. Yeah. And the program that we designed with them worked in the following way. The first thing is what you see here on the left. We really put a lot of effort together with them to define the training target. And in their case, they said, well, what we want in our companies, we want to have passionate digital leaders. So we want to have people that all have the same vocabulary. We want to have a technical foundation for them. They should understand what a digital business is, and they need some soft skills like design thinking. And in that case, what they actually did is they wrote a job advertisement, a job description. Yeah, that's not what we do always, but I really like this example because it made it so clear. It said like, so far you have the following experience. In the future, this is what you should do. Yeah. So this is kind of like the first step you have to do. You have to define what is it that I need in my organization. And some organizations are very clear about this. In some organizations, we support this, but this is the first step. And then there's a training running, and in this case, they train the top 650 leadership people out of the 300,000 employees, and then in the next step, each of these leaders will define what kind of like their teams need to learn and to take part of that. And we've defined here a 16-week program, as you can see it. And in this 16-week program, you start off with what is the digital transformation, what is digital strategy, and then you go more into different technology, working methods, and so on. Yeah. The interesting thing is each of these weeks has been organized in a way that all 4 different formats that I touched on before, the online modules, the digital labs, the discussions, and the interaction with the experts, plays a role in each of the weeks. Yeah, and each week is being organized that it is for the individual learner only 2 hours, so that you can fill it into a very packed schedule. Yeah. Nonetheless, the goal is that in the end you really are a passionate digital leader, and that we close the capability gap. And here comes in the last step, what is also very important, and then we are measuring success. Yeah, so we are measuring KPIs, and we really check against the job description if people are now able to fulfill this. Yeah, so I really like this program because it starts with the clear goal, it uses kind of like the full offering, has this rhythm at the program, and it ends. And maybe to make this even more clear, how does this work? So here is the kind of like deep dive on one of the weeks. Yeah, so this is the week on data, as it's called here. You could also say this is more on machine learning. Yeah, so in this week, people get around 90 minutes or so of self-paced learning content, something on data strategy and introduction to machine learning, where in a Monday morning email, as you see here, they kind of like get this overview. This week, you should learn this module about data strategy, 40 minutes, the introduction to machine learning. Yeah, and you have these 2 digital labs that you should work on. This is self-paced. People can do it on Monday and Tuesday as suggested here, but they can do it whenever they want during the week. Yeah. On Friday, there's a short group work. It's a Friday check-in where they, in their learning group, will quickly discuss kind of like what have we learned, yeah. And then there's on Thursday there's a tutoring session. So these 2 milestones are kind of like fixed in the calendar. Everything is being self-paced, and this is how all the 16 weeks of the program that I've shown you before are organized. And this is how we believe you can really yield outstanding results and having an impact on the learner. How do we measure this? We look into different things. The first thing we look into is a self-assessment, and this is extremely interesting. So in the beginning, we do a self-assessment where in the case of the example that I'm showing at the moment, we look against the digital leader profile. Yeah, but let's say, for example, you want to train your team around security, then we would do the self-assessment around whatever your security goals are. Yeah, so we look at that in the beginning and in the end, and then the goal is to really see an improvement. Then all the training activities, yeah, so the exercises you do, the group works you do, the digital labs you do are also KPIs, because you see how good are people doing in these exercises. We constantly measure feedback, yeah, so we constantly measure user satisfaction. And then the interesting thing by having having an online tool and having an online offering is you can also just look at the usage and the content performance, and you see courses started, courses finished, exercise failure rates, is there a certain multiple choice where everybody fails, and you can learn an awful lot from these metrics, and you can really see, is this program yielding the success that we want? Yeah. And this it was kind of like a bit of a ride, yeah, but this is in a nutshell what we're doing. Yeah, so we are trying to use digital methods in the best possible way to close the digital skill gap. We try to do this at scale so that you can solve this problem. A lot of people need this, yeah, and we do it in a way where we believe this really works for companies and for big organizations.
Thank you, Jan. From what you tell us, actually, it is a great combination of blended learning using hands-on and online learning, and also personalized learning because it's personalized to different jobs in the companies itself. But I think what our participants would also like to know is, does it really work? Can you show us some examples?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, and let me share my screen again, because then I think I can share some more statistics. So why do I believe that this works? Yeah, I believe this works because there is really leading European companies, as I've shown you in the beginning, that work with us, that constantly working with us. Some of them for the past 4.5 years. Yeah, and if this approach would not be working, I think this is for me one of the 2 most important points why I believe it works. Yeah. Why does it work? Well, there's more than 100,000 users that have access to our platform. Around 2,500-3,000 we are now managing in these very actively managed programs, as I have shown it. Yeah, but there's beyond these also more that have access. And then there's a couple of metrics that I think for those of you that are here in the session today that come more from the learning and HR field, at least I believe these are very good metrics in this area of online learning. So involuntary training, so not mandatory ones, but voluntary trainings, with our approach and with our content, we managed to get an 80% activation rates. That means out of 100 people starting a program, 80 actually really get active, 80 or more get active. We have an 80% completion rate of our courses. Yeah, so that means of every course started, of every 10 courses started, more than 8, in many cases 9, actually also get completed. And this is also true for the voluntary trainings. And then the feedback is overwhelmingly good wherever we go. So this is this 80 to 90% net promoter score of users saying, hey, this program and this content I would actually recommend to my colleagues, yeah, is in the 80, 90s, yeah, across the board of all our customers. And this is really what is important. And then beyond the fact that there is these big customers in our target group that we're serving, the one statistic that I really like, where I think it makes sense what we are doing here, is in some of the surveys that we've been pursuing with people that learned with us 6 or more months ago, we asked people, hey, were you able to apply these capabilities in your daily work? And there the rate is more than 90% said, hey, I've learned something and now that changed the way I work. And this brings us back to this initial motivation of why are we doing this? Because the world is changing and companies have this problem that their employees need to be changing. And obviously, what we are doing here helps the individual employee to do a better job in their daily life. That's the motivation why we started all this. Yeah, and this is for me the proof point why this works. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you, Jan. There's also one question about, is there a fit for academic institutions in using university for industry content?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting question. So I think it is. I think the very rigid program approach that we are running is something that I would argue might not be the perfect fit for our academic institutions. I also think it is not needed, because in academic institutions with students there is a different motivation because they have a goal to finish this. Yeah. However, I believe our content is highly relevant for academic institutions because it can be very complementary. It can be very complementary to the academic content which is there, and it can give the students in the academic institutions fantastic insights of how is industry thinking about these topics, yeah, and can help them to prepare for the world out there where they will eventually, after they finish their studies, work. So I think absolutely, yeah. I think in the university context, our offering and our platform can be indeed much more of a library potentially, yeah, or of dedicated curricula that are, for example, running together with a lecture, yeah, where the part that we are orchestrating together with the companies of the live sessions and the group work would be exactly the role of the professor, yeah. And then kind of like on top of this is our digital labs, and this is our online content. And this kind of like brings in this more industry focused, application focused perspective. So I think this could work really nicely.
That's great. So I also feel that it's always good for our customers to get a chance to try before they make up their mind. So we would like to give the participants of this webinar today an opportunity to try out the program. So we are offering the digitization basics program from the 16th of November to the 18th of December. We are offering 20 seats for free. So whoever would like to avail of this can contact us at Digitech, and we'll offer 1 seat per organization so that you get to experience it. And obviously, if there's any more information that's required, we'd be happy to work with our participants on that. So with that, Jan, I'd like to thank you for all of the information you shared. I see that there's actually one more question come in, so let me see that. So someone's asking, are there any specific technologies that are more significant for companies to consider than others?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. Because I think this is extremely hard to answer, because that depends an awful lot on your specific situation. So what is the most relevant technology that you should consider, or is there certain technology more relevant than other? Is, for example, blockchain relevant for you or not? Yeah, and this is exactly what this introductory trainings are all about, to understand this. So I personally believe, yeah, that every business leader today should at least have a basic understanding what is machine learning in its basics. Yeah, so you don't need to be an expert, and you don't need to be able to write a neural network. Absolutely not. But you need to understand what is it, why is it working, What can you do with it? What can you not do with it? You also should be aware of, at least in broad terms, what is a blockchain? Yeah, so and what are the possibilities? Because only then can you decide, well, blockchain maybe in my supply chain, but nothing I have to really worry about. Yeah, but the possibilities that artificial intelligence brings to me in terms of process automation in the sales area, process automation in the back office, highly relevant. Maybe not so relevant for my product, because in my product not relevant. And then in a third step, maybe you figure out, and virtual reality and augmented reality, wow, I never thought about this, but this can really change the way how I do service. So this is the technology that is relevant for me. So I would actually say, you have to find that out yourself, but in order to be able to find this out, you need to have this base knowledge. Yeah, and something like this very introductory 5-week, 6-hour package that we've brought you there, or like the leadership program that I've shown before with the 16 weeks with 2 hours each week. Yeah, this is exactly the way how we can bring everybody to this level that you can make this decision, and then you can decide, okay, in my company, I need 10 data scientists that really know a lot about artificial intelligence. I want my supply chain guys to know about blockchain because they want to use tools that use the blockchain in order to optimize the supply chain and so on.
That's really good. So I think now we are at a time where the organization requires innovation across the board. So we need to be able to provide the access to these learning programs across the board to people, so then they can think out of the box and come up with innovative solutions and to be able to contribute to the organization's future growth. So that's another reason why I think this is relevant to more than just one line of people.
Yes, absolutely. This is this vicious circle that I mentioned, right? That's the problem today, that too little people know these basics.
Yes, yes. Well, I think that we've come to the end of the session, and I'd like to thank you for your time, Jan, and also for all of the participants. If there's any further questions, please feel free to reach out to us at Edutech and also to University for Industry, or to your contacts in Edutech as well. And thank you very much again, and look forward to talking to you more on how we can contribute to your organization's digital transformation initiatives. Thank you.
Everybody.